Hear me? Okay. Okay, thank you very much for the introduction and good morning everyone. Today I will be talking to you about some of the work that we're doing at the University of Buffalo on the development of novel structured three-way catalysts and digital oxidation catalysts with improved low temperature performance. Before starting, I would like to acknowledge the people that participated in this work, particularly Uschi Graham, who was a former PhD student in Marissa's group. She's currently a development engineer at Palladium in Buffalo, and the majority of the data that I showed today was collected by Judy. So Judy participated in the data discussion and analysis, and Judy is currently a postdoc at Stanford University with Tom Karanillo. I would like also to acknowledge our collaborators at the National Lab, particularly Tom Hughes, Mike Lanes, and Jason Joy. Some of the images that I will show you today were collected at the University of New Mexico by Professor Abhay Datye and his team, particularly Ian Pan and Stephen Porter. So some of the NOx TPD data that I'll show you was collected at Sorbonne University by Cyril Thomas. And finally, I would like to acknowledge August National Lab for funding this work. Today's presentation is split into parts. On the first part, I'll talk to you about the development of bimetallic catalysts with palladium and platinum, supported on a hydrothermal stable support, which is silica in the core and zirconium on the cell. And these are very promising diesel oxidation catalysts. The second part of my talk will focus on monometallic platinum catalysts supporting on cilia core and zirconia cell support. These are very promising three-way catalysts. So with that, I will transition to the first part of my talk, which are the bimetallic catalysts for diesel oxidation applications. So here we can see the emission standards that become the most stringent. Particularly, we can see that Tier 3 was phased in 2017 and is expected to be fully implemented by 2025. So the emission standards are becoming very stringent, as we know. So here we can see the example of the after-treatment system for diesel vehicles, and CO and hydrocarbons are oxidized in the diesel oxidation only, and then the particulate matter is oxidized in the diesel particulate filter, and the NOx is being reduced in selective catalytic reduction only. So ideally, the exhaust contains water, CO2, and nitrogen. Of course, this is an ideal case scenario and not the actual reality. So one of the main challenges in diesel vehicles is that the exhaust, the first 1 to 3 weeks of vehicle operation is relatively cold, so we call it a cold start. And within this cold start, almost 80% of the emissions are released in the atmosphere. So the emissions community established a target of achieving 90% conversion of CO, hydrocarbons, and NOx at 150 degrees C, which is very challenging to find a catalyst that is active at that low temperature. However, looking into literature, we found that palladium zirconia seems to have improved low temperature performance. And here we can see the CO conversion as a function of temperature and the propylene conversion as a function of temperature for the palladium on zirconia. So what we see is that this catalyst achieves 90% conversion of CO at around 183 degrees C and 90% conversion of propylene at around 192 degrees C. Still not close to the 150 degrees challenge that it seems that it's a promising material. One of the weaknesses of this material is that its surface area is really dropping after hydrothermal aging. So what we see here is that fresh palladium zirconia has a surface area of 93 meters squared per gram, and when this material is hydrothermally aged at 800 degrees C for 16 hours, there is a 74% decrease in the surface area down to 24 meters squared per gram. So at this point we're wondering, is there a way for us to increase the surface area of zirconia? And we did that by synthesizing silica spheres by the Stover method, that's a known method, and then we deposited the zirconium layer on top of the silica sphere, and we created this so-called silica at zirconium porcelain structure. So just a little bit of a background about the synthesis. So initially the silica spheres are dispersed in ethanol, and we add a bridge 30, which is a surfactant, and the zirconium butoxide. We allow the solution to age for 3 days at room temperature. Then we separated the solids, we dried them at 100 degrees C overnight, calcined them at 500 degrees C for 2 hours, and then we got structures you can see here, where silica is deposited on the cell core and zirconium is deposited on the cell. And of course, after that, we wanted to add the precious metal, which in this case is palladium. Palladium is added with the wet impregnation, the final catalyst. After the palladium impregnation is dried at 100 degrees C and calcined at 500 degrees C for 2 hours. So in order to convince you that this is indeed the structure that we obtained, Michael Lenz from Oxford National Lab obtained 3D tomography images for us. So basically what we see here is that silicon is the blue, it's in the center of the material, it's in the core, zirconium is the red, is on the cell of the material, and palladium, which is the white particles that you see, they are on the cell, they're deposited on the cell, zirconium cell. And a very important information here is that the surface area of this material is different than the surface area of the palladium at zirconia. So this plot here shows the surface area of the palladium support of the coastal material and palladium and zirconia when these materials are calcined at 500 degrees C for 2 hours and when they are hydrothermally aged at 800 degrees C for 16 hours. So what we see here is that the coastal material has twice as big surface area compared to the palladium and zirconia. So this was very promising. And also, if you look here, the surface area after aging at 800 degrees C, it's almost 110 meters square per gram for the palladium support of the coastal support. This was very exciting. So we want to investigate this material even further. So another important information here is that the silica core itself is almost non-porous and has a very low surface area of around 2.3 meters square per gram. So basically the enhanced surface area that we observe on this material is attributed to the zirconium cell and not the silica core. So we know from literature that the reason why zirconia is losing its surface area after hydrothermal aging is because zirconia is crystallized, and we want to understand if we have crystallization of zirconia on this coastal support as well. So for this reason, we collect XRD data. Here you can see this XRD for the silica and zirconium support, XRD data for the fresh palladium support of the coastal support, and after hydrothermal aging. So basically, we don't see crystallized zirconia formation of this material, which can mean two things. One possibility is that indeed the majority of zirconia is not present in the crystallized zirconia form. And the second option is that, well, maybe there is a crystallized zirconia formation, it's just so small that cannot be detected by XRD. So we turned to Sir Thomas from Sorbonne University and asked him to do some NOx-TPD measurements. So the background behind that is that NOx can be absorbed on crystallized zirconia. So we use basically as a fingerprint to see if we have crystallized zirconia on our coastal support. So what you see here, this is NOx-TPD. We see that on zirconia, there is a big amount of NOx and azot, close to 5.8 micromoles per cubic liter. And then what we see here for the coastal support is that it's not able to absorb a lot of NOx, so the amount of NOx and azot, as you can see, is way smaller compared to the zirconia support. So what this means is that the majority of the zirconium in this coastal support is not present as crystallized zirconia. Of course, we're wondering what is zirconium, what is the state of zirconium in that support, and we decided to do some FTIR measurements on the silica spheres and on the silica and zirconium support. And what we saw here, we saw the increase in this band at around 1,000 per centimeters, which basically this band is attributed to the formation of the zirconium oxygen silicon bonds. So basically what we think is happening is that silicon can diffuse to zirconium and vice versa, and there is this zirconium oxygen silicon bond that is formed that alleviates the formation of crystallized zirconia, and this is the main reason why this material is hydrothermally stable and doesn't lose, it can maintain a big part of its surface area. So we're very excited about this material and we wanted to evaluate its performance. So here you can see this is a home-built microreactor in our lab. So we deposit 100 milligrams of catalyst in the quartz cube, and the flow rate that we're using is 333 SCM. The catalyst is pressed and sealed to 250 to 500 microns, and this is our gas around space velocity. So we want to simulate the diesel exhaust, and for this reason we flow all these molecules that you see down there. So we flow oxygen, we have CO2, we have 6% water, hydrogen, CO, and NO, and we have 4 hydrocarbons, ethylene, propylene, propane, and decane. So water in our reactor is introduced with a syringe pump, and the liquid decane is introduced with a bubbler that is immersed in a water bath at a controlled temperature. In this case, temperature is 20 degrees C. So the catalyst at a diesel green at 700 degrees C for 4 hours, and you can see the conditions here. The acidic at 600 degrees C for 20 minutes. And then the catalytic evaluation involves cooling down to 100 degrees C and then heating back up to 500 degrees C with a round rate of 2 degrees C per minute. So we want to challenge our catalyst, so we hydrothermally age them at 800 degrees C for 10 hours. And this is the condition that we use for hydrothermal aging. So let me show you the performance of the deep-grade monometallic palladium supported on the coastal support. So the left figure here shows the CO with the black total hydrocarbon, which is the blue, and the NOx conversion as a function of the temperature. And then the right plot shows the hydrocarbon conversions only separately. So what we see here is that this material can achieve 90% conversion of CO at around 186 degrees C, 186, so 90% conversion of total hydrocarbons at around 291 degrees C, and NOx is not converted. So what we see here for the hydrocarbons is that propane is very difficult to activate, and this is expected because it's a short chain alkane, so it's very stable. So what we can see here is that definitely this material is promising. Total hydrocarbons need to be improved. Okay, so but of course at the beginning we want to see the hydrothermally aged performance. So we hydrothermally age the catalyst at 800 degrees C for 10 hours. And here you can see the data after aging, which is the dashed lines here. So what is interesting to notice is that usually we expect after aging that the catalyst is going to be antitrade. But what we see here is that actually the catalyst is able to maintain its performance after aging. Okay, so we don't see a difference, a major difference before and after hydrothermal aging. So that shows basically that the catalyst is thermally stable. So we're looking at this data, and of course we got excited by the fact that this catalyst is thermally stable. And this work is already published, but we want to improve on this material even further. And so Julie started looking into literature, and she said, platinum is more active for hydrocarbon conversion, so why don't we create bimetallic catalysts? So why don't we add platinum on this material? And actually there is an additional benefit because platinum currently is cheaper than palladium, so we're going to reduce the cost of the catalyst as well. So with that, we decided to synthesize a series of bimetallic catalysts where the palladium to platinum molar ratio varies from 3.1 to 1 to 1 and 1 to 3. And also synthesize a platinum only monometallic catalyst for comparison. So something that I would like to note here is that all these catalysts have the same moles of precious metal with the monometallic palladium. Of course, the weight loading is different just because the atomic weight of platinum and palladium is different. So let me show you now how the bimetallic catalysts perform compared to monometallic palladium. So the left figure is the CO conversion, and the right figure is the total hydrocarbon conversion as a function of temperature. And this performance is for the degree catalyst. So what we see here is that when we have platinum in the samples, the performance of for CO as well as for total hydrocarbons improve. Okay, so particularly the 1 to 3 palladium to platinum catalyst seems to have the best performance. Of course, some of you might be wondering, well, why don't we make a monometallic platinum catalyst? This might perform even better. So we did that, and here you can see the performance of the monometallic platinum with yellow. So you can see definitely the bimetallics perform better than the monometallic platinum, and again, the 1 to 3 ratio of palladium to platinum seems to perform better than all the standard catalysts. This is the degree performance. So we hydrothermal age the catalyst. And here we can see the performance after hydrothermal aging. Important to note here that there is a small deactivation, but overall the catalysts are very thermally stable. And we see the same pattern. So we see that when we have platinum, the performance improves. And the best catalyst that outperforms all the rest is the one that has 1 to 3 palladium to platinum molar ratio. So, one of the reasons we think that platinum is not such a good catalyst is because platinum, we have CO positive from platinum, so basically the majority of CO has to be oxidized first before we see hydrocarbon conversion, and that's why we see this sharp line of curves for the hydrocarbons in the case of platinum. So we want to understand these materials even better. Okay? So we want to understand why the 1 to 3 palladium to platinum outperforms all the rest. And also we want to understand a little bit what is going on with platinum and the monometallic platinum. So we start collecting TM images. So before I go to TM images, I want to summarize a little bit the results that I showed you so far. So this figure here shows the T50 and the T90. So basically, it's the temperature that 50% and 90% conversion of CO and other hydrocarbons. So when the catalyst is green, and when the catalyst is hydrothermally aged. So the x-axis shows the catalyst that we started, and from left to right, we increase the platinum content. So what we see here is that definitely the T50 and T90 decrease, which is a really good thing, that's what we want. And the catalyst that outperforms all the rest is the 1 to 3 palladium to platinum, as I mentioned previously. This both for degree and for hydrothermal age. So as I said before, we want to understand this catalyst even better, so we start collecting TM images. And so here you can see a TM image for the platinum supported on the silica zirconium support after hydrothermal aging. Okay, so platinum severely sinters, as you can see here. It forms this very big platinum particles, close to 450 nanometers. And this is not the only particle that we show. This is an example, so we show a couple of them. So what happens with platinum? So platinum is mobile. During hydrothermal aging, it can form this big platinum aggregate. Okay, so this is not desirable. So we would also do TM images at the University of New Mexico for the best bimetallic catalyst, which was the 1 to 3 palladium to platinum after hydrothermal aging. And here we saw a couple of small particles dispersed. We also saw particles that are metallic, but more interestingly, we saw particles that look like that are biphasic in nature. Biphasic means that they contain a metallic phase as well as an oxide phase. So Professor Barker and his team did an EDS analysis of the metallic and the oxide phase. And what they found was, well, the metallic phase contained 12% palladium and 88% platinum, but more interestingly, they found that the oxide phase contained 58% of palladium and 42% of platinum. Okay, so that's an interesting information because up to that point, we always thought that the oxide phase is TDO, right? But now we can see that the oxide phase contains both palladium and platinum. So what we think is happening here is that again, platinum is mobile during hydrothermal aging. You can form alloys with palladium, but also it can be trapped by the palladium oxide phase. And this is a mechanism that the platinum is becoming stabilized in the bimetallic catalyst. And that's why we don't see the big platinum aggregates that we saw in the monometallic platinum catalyst. So, in order to convince you that this is not the only biphasic particle we observe, so I just want to show you a couple of images. So, these are images for the bimetallic catalyst after hydrothermal aging, from molar ratio palladium to platinum from 3 to 1, 1 to 1, and 1 to 3. And as you can see here, we see a couple of biphasic particles. So this one, this is another one, this is another one. Here we have another one, here we have another one. So we have a couple of those biphasic particles. So again, Dr. Bradley and his team did an analysis, and here's an analysis of these biphasic particles. And here we summarize the results. So the left figure shows the palladium composition over the three bimetallic catalysts that we have. Again, from left to right, we increase the platinum content. So what we see here is that in the biphasic particle, palladium, 70% of palladium is present in the metallic phase, and 30% of palladium is present in the oxide phase. So the right figure shows the platinum composition again over the three bimetallic catalysts. And what we see again is that in the biphasic particle, 70% of platinum is in the metallic phase and 30% of platinum is in the oxide phase. Okay? So what this shows us is that when we increase the platinum content in the bimetallic catalyst, we increase the platinum and palladium content in the metallic phase. And we think that this is related to the improved performance that we see on the catalyst that has 1 to 3 molar ratio of palladium to platinum. So this summarizes the first part of my talk. So I hope I convinced you that on the silica zirconium catalyst there is a zirconium oxygen silicon bond that is formed, and this leads to improved surface area of this material when it's exposed to elevated temperatures. So when we have bimetallics, palladium, platinum, supported on the dorsal support, so platinum can be stabilized by being trapped in the palladium oxide phase and also by forming palladium-platinum alloys. And when we increase the platinum content, we have more palladium and platinum in the metallic phase of the biphasic particles, and this leads to an improved performance of the 1 to 3 palladium to platinum bimetallic catalyst. With that, I will transition to the second part of my talk, where I'll show you some of the monometallic, in this case, Syria at zirconia coastal support. So as you can see, we try to apply the coastal concept to other materials as well. But in this case, in the Syria zirconia, this material is used as a three-way catalyst. Three-way catalysts are used in gasoline vehicles, and the role is to convert CO and hydrocarbons to a clean output. So here is a series of the reactions that are taking place in gasoline vehicles. So gasoline vehicles operate under a stoic amount of oxygen. So when we have excess oxygen, the NOx conversion is suppressed. When we don't have enough oxygen, the hydrocarbon and CO conversion is suppressed. So basically, stoic amount of oxygen seems to be the optimum amount for NOx, CO, and hydrocarbon conversion to occur. However, in realistic conditions, oxygen fluctuates because we go through lean-rich cycles. So basically, it's important to find a material that is able to buffer oxygen. And this material, it's known, it's Syria. So Syria basically has the ability to store oxygen in its lattice during clean conditions and release oxygen from its lattice during rich conditions. So particularly if we add zirconium onto the Syria, so we can even improve the ability of lattice oxygen. So we synthesize some polyhedral Syria. Polyhedral Syria is the most commonly used Syria. And we noticed that the surface area of this Syria really decreases from 89 meters square per gram to 21 meters square per gram when we change the calcination temperature from 450 to 600 degrees C. And so, of course, this is not desirable. And we synthesize some Syria spheres. Actually, later on how the materials are synthesized. And we notice that these materials are more thermally stable, and we can see that the surface area is maintained when it's exposed to the same conditions to the polyhedral Syria. So let me show you now how the Syria spheres were synthesized. So they follow the hydrothermal synthesis where Syria nitrate, water, and ethylene glycol are mixed in an autoclave, and they are allowed to react at 180 degrees C for 2 hours. So, for 8 hours. So, if we stop the reaction and we collect the support, we can see that we are able to form these nice looking cilia spheres that have a diameter of around 100 nanometers. Of course, we want to create a zirconium cell of this material, so we follow the similar process as the first part of my talk. So we add a bridge 30, which is a surfactant, zirconium oxide, and then we allow the solution to age for 3 days at room temperature. Then eventually we collect the solid, we dry them at 100 degrees C overnight, and we calcine them at 500 degrees C for 2 hours. And we collected the material that you see here, and I'm going to show you the images, obviously, to convince you that this is what we get. So we have cilia in the core, and what we think we get is that we have a cell that is a solid solution of cilia and zirconia. So during this project, we decided also to vary the amount of zirconia. So this is something that we did do in the very first part of the talk. And actually, here it changes the molar concentration of zirconium from 0, which is when we have just the cilia spheres, and then slowly increase the zirconium content to 0.05 up to 0.5. So we're lucky enough to obtain EDS images from Michael Lane's at Oxford National Lab. So here you can see that cilia is the yellow and is deposited in the core, and we have zirconium, which is the blue, and it's on the cell. So Judy was able to convert the brightness of this EDS image to intensity, and you can see the results here. So this is the intensity of cerium and zirconium across the diameter of the particle. So what we see basically is that indeed the cerium content intensity is increased in the core, and then zirconium has an increased intensity at the ends of this particle, so at the cell of this particle. So what we think is happening basically is that on the cell we have both cerium and zirconium, and there is a solid solution that is formed. So these are hypotheses. So we think that, okay, this is what happens when we have just the cilia sphere. We start adding zirconium, we start creating a solid solution of zirconium on the surface. Then we add more zirconium. Well, in that case, we start forming a crystallized zirconium. Zirconia, this actually is not preferred because, as I show you later on, we have platinum in the catalyst, and then platinum does not interact so strongly with crystallized zirconia and forms big particles. So this is our support, and we wanted, of course, to add platinum. So because we want to use this material as a three-way catalyst, so here we do wet impregnation, and the loading of platinum is 1.88%. Again, the catalyst is calcined at 100 degrees C overnight, dry at 100 degrees C overnight, and calcined at 500 degrees C for 2 hours. Okay, so you have seen this cartoon before, but the conditions are different. So the flow rate is 333 SSTF. We load 100 milligrams of catalyst that in this case we dilute with 200 milligrams of silicon carbide. The conditions that we're using are shown here. So we want to use a simulated gas with exhaust stream. So the amount of oxygen is stoic. We have 10% water, hydrogen CONO, and a series of hydrocarbons. In this case, we have iso-octane as a liquid hydrocarbon that is introduced in the reactor with a buffer that is immersed on the water bath that is set at 0 degrees C. Okay, so here's our protocol. So we're doing degrading at 700 degrees C for 4 hours. The conditions are here. Pre-treatment, 600 degrees C for 20 minutes. So you're cooling down at 100 degrees C, heating up at 500 degrees C. The ramp rate is 2 degrees C per minute. Now, in this case, for three-way catalyst, we're doing a redox hydrothermal agent, which is a severe hydrothermal agent. So we expose the catalyst to 100 degrees C for 10 hours, and we are doing a lead-rich switch every 10 seconds. Okay? So it's a severe hydrothermal agent that the catalyst tend to be activated usually under these conditions. Okay, so let me show you how the platinum, the cilia sphere catalyst performs after degrading. So here you see the CO conversion, total hydrolysis conversion, and NOx conversion as a function of temperature. Again, T90 is achieved at 194 degrees C. for CO, for total hydrocarbons, 290 is achieved at 228, and in this case, we see also NOx conversion, but obviously we didn't see in the first part of the talk, and then we see that T90 here, 90% conversion of NOx is at 244 degrees C. Okay, so this is without zirconium. Okay, so we decided to start adding zirconium on the sample, and here you can see the bar chart of the temperature that 50% and 90% conversion is achieved. And from left to right, we increase the zirconium content. So the green bar here is the serious spheres without zirconium. And so we see that by adding the zirconium content, we see some improvement in the performance up to 0.1 and 0.2 molar concentration of zirconium. But when we start adding more zirconium in the sample, we see that the catalyst slowly deactivates. And this is the same for CO2 hydrocarbons and NOx. So this is the performance after degrading. So let's see what is the performance after hydrothermal. So here you see that after hydrothermal still, you see that when we add a small amount of zirconium, around 0.05 and 0.1, so we see an improvement, particularly here for the two hydrocarbons and NOx. But then if we add more zirconium in the sample, we see that the catalyst does not perform as well. So at this point, we want to understand what is the effect of the zirconium on the platinum particle size, and for this reason, Judy did CO vascular absorption experiments where she was able to find the platinum particle size as well as the platinum dispersion of this, in the series of these materials here when we were changing the zirconium content. So what we see is that basically when the zirconium content is until 0.2, the platinum particle size is pretty much the same. We increase the zirconium content and we're able to see that the particle size increases and the zirconium, the platinum dispersion decreases, which is expected. So basically what we think is happening is that when we start adding more zirconium on the sample, that we start forming crystallized zirconia, and then platinum forms these big platinum particles that we saw in the CO vascular absorption results. But of course, we want to use another technique to verify this observation. So we did CO drifts over all standard catalysts. So here what we see is that from bottom to top, we increase the zirconium content. So here this green spectrum is for the platinum support of the serious spheres. And what we see is that there is this high wave number peak that is attributed to platinum interacting with the cilia. Some people call it ionic platinum, some people call it atomically dispersed platinum, but in any case, this platinum is small in size. But what we see is that when we increase the zirconium content, the intensity of this high wave number peak decreases, and suddenly we have the formation of this lower wave number peak that is attributed to the formation of platinum nanoclusters. Okay, so this observation agrees with the CO vascular absorption experiments, showing that indeed, when we increase the zirconium content, platinum, it forms big platinum particles on the sample. Okay, so one important characteristic of the cerium zirconium materials is the oxygen storage capacity and the oxygen releasing rate. And we want to see how these two parameters are related with zirconium content. So we found the oxygen storage capacity by an experiment that I'm describing here. So the reactor is loaded with a 25 kilograms of catalyst. And the reactors in this case, the catalysts in this case are degraded in the degraded state, so they are not the best catalysts. So initially the catalysts are exposed to 550 degrees C with oxygen for 10 minutes. Then eventually we purge out with argon for 30 minutes to make sure we remove this dissolved oxygen. And then we introduce CO for 10 minutes in the reactor. So basically, if we choose CO conversion, it's because CO interacts with the largest oxygen. So the oxygen storage capacity measurements and the oxygen releasing rate measurements were conducted at three temperatures at 150, 350, and 550 degrees C. But the purposes of this work, because we wanted this material to be active at a low temperature, I show you on the results for the 150 degrees C. Okay, so this figure here shows the CO conversion as a function of time. The black line is the blank reactor, okay? So basically, it's our baseline. And then the light blue line is the CO conversion from the platinum supported on the Syrian zirconium catalyst. So we really see that CO is converted over this catalyst, and by integrating the area between these two curves, we can find the oxygen storage capacity. And in this case, it's around 259 micromolars of O per gram of catalyst. So if we subtract the CO concentration of the catalyst from the CO concentration of the blank reactor, so we can get basically the delta CO, and we can find the slope, and this slope gives us the oxygen releasing rate. So that's how we calculate the oxygen releasing rate, and in this case it's 5.2 micromolars of O per gram catalyst per second. So let me show you now the results. So again, the y-axis shows us our catalyst will increase the zirconium content. From left to right, the zirconium content is increased. The light blue line here is the oxygen releasing rate. And we can see that it goes to a maximum when the zirconium concentration is around 0.1. And then also the green line is the oxygen storage capacity, and then we'll see again that the oxygen storage capacity goes to a maximum when the zirconium content is around 0.1. So that was interesting, and also at the same time we want to see how these parameters are related to the performance of the catalyst. So here I'm showing you the P50, the temperature that 50% conversion of CO, total hydrocarbons, and NOx takes place. So what we see is that when the zirconium molar concentration is 0.1, that CO, total hydrocarbon, and NOx P50 is lower, and then eventually when we increase the zirconium content, they all increase. So this shows us basically that by optimizing the oxygen storage capacity, the oxygen releasing rate, we are able to control the performance of the catalyst. And also that the zirconium content should be a moderate amount of zirconium and not a lot, because potentially we have platinum sintering. So this summarizes my talk. So I hope I convinced you that we have, in the first part of my talk, on the silica and zirconium catalyst, we have formation of zirconium oxygen silicon bonds, and we have the presence of biphasic platinum palladium particles with a high percentage of platinum palladium in the metallic phase, and this can improve the durability and the performance of the bimetallic platinum palladium supported on the silica and zirconium catalyst supports. And then the second part of my talk showed that by tuning the zirconium content on the platinum and supported on the silica and zirconium catalyst, we can basically maximize the performance of the three-way catalyst by optimizing the platinum particle size, dispersion, oxygen storage capacity, as well as the oxygen releasing rate. With that, I would like to thank you for your attention, and I will be happy to answer any of your questions.
So our floor is open for questions. Just FYI, if you have questions, please come to the front and use the mic right in the middle. Thank you.
A little high, Ming.
I was prepared to smoking, actually. Sorry, Gator.
Very nice, Eleni. I just had a question in the second part of your talk, where you have Syria surrounded by some zirconia. Then when all of your pictures show platinum interacting with Syria, so that is the Syria that manages to get to the surface, and then the platinum to find that Syria. Is there any interaction with the zirconia by the platinum at all that you can characterize?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we haven't seen, but maybe we haven't, we haven't done the experiments that we're supposed to do, right? So this, it's, we feel that this is a promising material. We understand some things, but definitely there are things that we don't know yet. So, I think we haven't seen a platinum interaction with zirconium. But platinum interacting with Syria, it's not.
And did you ever try having the Syria around the zirconium? just the reverse of what you did. I realized that would be a different thing.
We didn't try that, but we tried to put Syria on silica.
I see.
Yes, the chemistry is very different, but yes, but we did try to put silica on zirconia.
Because presumably you want to encourage platinum-cerium interactions.
Morning, very nice talk. I'm curious to know, it looks like you can age an 800C with redox, and you can maintain something that behaves pretty similarly to your core shell concept. I'm curious to know, if you keep pushing the temperature or the time, at some point, do you destroy the core shell structure and everything solid state diffuses and you just end up with a bulk mixed oxide? Or do you have any sense of what the threshold is at which you can maintain this kind of core shell structure and the advantages it provides?
So for the Syria zirconia, we didn't challenge the material a lot, I would say. So we went up to 800C only. For the silica zirconia, for the first part of the talk, we went up to 900C, and the performance was okay. Of course, there was some deactivation, but still it was active, this material, the first one. The second one, we didn't challenge it at higher temperatures.
Okay, thanks. That might be interesting.
Thank you.
Hello, nice talk. Is the particle sizes are relatively large of plating on the metal. Is there any benefit to going to smaller particle size, or are they just pretty much center of your reaction? I mean, have you ever used a method to, say, disperse 1 nanometer particles on your core shell structure and see how those behave, or do they just center of the edge?
So, we didn't try different methods of implementing the pressures. Like I think you're referring to the first part of the talk, right? With the Palladium.
Yeah, like for example, using measuring the PVC of your material and using say SEA or any other method that could better disperse the rather than having 5 to 10 nanometer particles or have like 1 nanometer particles. Would that make a difference? Is that really critical in this case? Or?
It can make a difference. It can make a difference. So if you are able, of course, to have more highly dispersed particles that are going to stay highly dispersed after
as long as they stay highly dispersed, right? That's the key.
Because making them is one thing. Also, I'm going to stay the same at 800C. That's also a challenge. But we have been trying some more, I would say, sophisticated precious metal.
You have some expertise in that, though, so you can. Thank you.
Alright, so with this, let's conclude our keynote here. Let's thank our speaker one more time.